15 years ago, we started Transition Garden. It's a way to use a garden to build community, to build additional strength of local control over what's going on in the outside world. Communities working more closely together, working on food production, which is important, of course, to everyone, and a way to really build that community empowerment.
Garden grows through the seasons that flow. Our garden grows, our garden grows.
You know when I'm away,
Yeah.
yeah, and you're going to look after stuff.
Yeah.
Yeah, so I got to show you how to start the pump.
Okay.
That's really easy, not a big deal.
Okay.
Okay, so the first thing is we got to prime the pump.
Okay.
So we take this cap off here and we're going to pour water in there. So this lid comes off,
Okay.
and then what we're going to do to get water to fill and prime the pump, I take this jug and we put it down in the well, fill it up, pour
Okay.
it in there, and we prime the pump.
Okay. One full thing or?
With just one full thing.
Okay.
Yeah. See that?
Ah.
You like that? It still works. But
Yeah.
Yeah.
Wow.
So it's full, the well. It was even fuller actually about 3 weeks ago.
Okay.
And by the end of the summer, it's going to keep going down and down and down. So the stick is to push this under the water.
Okay.
Otherwise, it's just going to float there. And
Gotcha.
yeah. So I push it down with the stick, and I pull it up with the rope.
Okay.
Walk around in a mud puddle here. Okay, so then I'm going to pour the whole thing in. Okay. There you go. Now you start to slowly move that lever back. All the way back. All right, now what it's doing is it's sucking air. Okay, so it's just sucking air. And at some point it'll start to pump water. And you'll hear the engine kind of lug down. Yeah, now it's pumping. And that's all there is to it.
Okay.
All right, let's talk about weeds. Now I'm sitting here in the greenhouse, beautiful controlled environment, not much weed problem, but it can be a jungle out there. So let's talk about weeding.
got some onions here. This is a particular type of onion that we're going to let grow all year long. It never forms a bulb. It's like a green onion, but it just keeps getting bigger and bigger, like a green onion. Almost looks like a leek by the end of the season. So we got to get in there, do a little bit of weeding. We've got some clover coming in. We've got some crabgrass. Here's a tiny little onion. I got to be careful I don't weed that one. Another tiny little onion there. So I'm just going to reach in by hand, kind of sneak around. This tool is very nice to kind of get in and just loosen up some weeds so they come out a little more easily. And then I just lift them out, throw them in a tub here, destined for the compost. I can reach in pretty close around some of these plants and just pull up some weeds. So I just sort of methodically go through, and look at there's a nice big one, kind of heading off every which direction. And of course, gives you more pride because the garden just looks nicer. You always want to be able to show your garden to your neighbors, your friends, and there's an important aspect of gardening is just being proud of what you're doing. So now that I've gotten some bare soil here from weeding, we can do a moisture test. I looked at the rain gauge this morning. We had a light rain last night. Hasn't really rained for about a week until now. We had maybe 4 or 5 millimeters last night, so just very light. So I'm going to stick my finger down in there, and it is fairly moist all the way down. I can even pull up some soil. It's got that darker brown look to it, which tells me there's some good moisture, and I can feel the moisture in there. So the moisture must be still retained from earlier rains, which is really good, but it tells me I don't really need to do any watering here. So that's the idea with weeding. Just go around, spend a little bit of time every day. You can cover a lot of ground when you get methodical about it. Of really small weeds starting to come up underneath this broccoli. I want to knock all these weeds down and give the broccoli plants time to grow, fill in this whole space. By then they'll be shading the ground, and I don't think we're going to get a whole lot more weed problem with this broccoli. So what I like to use is this knife hoe. It's literally a knife blade, but nicely shaped. So it's got a point here, good sized blade. It's all stainless steel, but it's sharp, and we're going to use it like a knife. We're going to put it just underneath the soil, and we're going to cut everything loose that's there, and it goes fairly quickly. We just work our way around all these broccoli plants, cut down all of these weeds, and that should take care of it.
The best way to build up your soil, that organic community, is to be adding fresh compost, good composted material. So it becomes a question of how do you do good compost? You're adding anything that's organic, that's coming out of your home. It could be your kitchen scraps, it could be yard waste where you're raking leaves, trimmings, weeds, whatever it might be that you're pulling. You're creating a microbial digestion system when you think about it that way. And you're allowing those bacteria to break all that material back down to its original elements and minerals, and then it becomes available for the soil and for the plants to take that up in their roots and provide healthy growth. Really all begins with the soil.
Now let's go see Shauna. She has a really interesting way to tackle weeds.
So weeds are a big problem in a garden. They're always going to be a problem. They're like the Zen exercise of life in the garden. Picking weeds, but you can use them to your advantage by creating a mulch with them. And a mulch is a way to actually reduce the weeds. So you can use the weeds to reduce the weeds, which is kind of a really nice thing. So taking something like this plantain that's got a really wide leaf on it, I would put a few leaves down like that. And then take, as your, let me see if I can find one that's got some roots that want to come up. Shake off the dirt and leave your first row of mulching weeds with their roots on top here so they can dry out and die. So this is a very tiny little miniature scale version of this, but you can do, you know, I'm being very, very precise here. I'm not this precise when I do it for real. But you can just basically use the leaves as you go down your little row here. There, see how nice and dry those roots are? That is not going to come back. Basically, you just use your row and you just start moving back. Shake all the dirt off. Make sure that your roots are up and off the soil. And then you just use the leaves on all the rest of the weeds to lay the roots of the next plants on. Okay. And then it just basically dies out. You can see I've done quite a bit in here. There's a lot of, and you're done. There, see, I've got there's a bunch of stuff here that's just not going to come back, but it's going to cover, you know, eventually cover up the path, and then there's no weeds. I really like the solutions that are simple. They don't require any cost, any pay, you know, nobody has to pay anything for them. And the lovely sort of irony of using the weeds to keep the weeds down really makes me a happy camper.
So what I have here are my red wiggler worms. This is just a temporary bin. I have to change the bin that they're going to be in because they don't like light, so you want ideally a dark container like this. And you may be wondering why I would want to keep worms as a pet. And they're not technically a pet, but the worms are actually really handy because what they're going to do is, I've got all this compost from all the food scraps, and they're going to break it down. And what's interesting is they don't actually eat the food itself, they eat the microorganisms on the food. So, but they will process it all into really nice black earth like this, which is called vermicompost. And this is super high in nitrogen and phosphorus. It's also, it's slow releasing nitrogen, so it doesn't burn the plants. A lot of plants need nitrogen. If you put too much in, it can burn the plants and stunt their growth. So this is nice, slow release stuff. And I've actually got a few peppers growing in here that must have come from seeds from the compost. But I've got a little bit of dryness happening on top of the soil here. So what I'm going to do is just spray that down. Now it's not supposed to be wet, but you want it to be moist. I've prepared this new bin. I've drilled holes in the top here for air to get through. And what I've got in here is just some newspaper scraps, some greens that I had, some coffee grinds. The coffee grinds And eggshells that I'm going to put in actually act more as like roughage for the worms to help them process the food. It's also good for the garden. Lots of people add coffee grinds and eggshells straight to their garden. I moistened these newspapers a few days ago, so they're not sopping wet, but they're moist because that's what the worms are going to want. And so I'm just going to check, see how these guys are doing here. I put some food in the other day. So there we go. So I'm just trying to build up my colony right now. They're still pretty small. These worms are great too because they've also done lots of testing and they take a lot of the toxins and heavy metals out of the soil or out of the compost. So all around they're great for the garden, making the soil better, and their castings are gardener's gold. To buy a bag of castings in like a garden center is quite expensive. So this is just a way to do it for free, and in the winter months I can add it to my houseplants. And what I'll do probably this summer is add a little bit to the base of every tomato that I'm going to plant. Castings is worm poop, essentially.
Oh,
yeah.
Worm shit.
Worm shit. Yeah, you got it. And when you add worms to a new bed, you want to make sure you keep some of their old bedding. Now, ideally, I would probably harvest all of this stuff. This is a mixture of peat moss and coffee grinds and eggshells, or egg cartons as well. I'm just going to add them in here. Oh, there's a good bunch. So this is, I put a handful of compost in the other day, so they're all happily eating it. That's good to see. And earthworms, they can eat 4 to 6 times their body weight in one day, so it's a great way to get rid of your compost. You're always supposed to leave some of the old bedding in when you change beds, not to stress the worms out. Oh yeah, they look great. They're doing good. I haven't gotten to see this entire bin yet, so I wasn't sure if they were stressed out or if they were doing all right, but they look pretty good. I'm pretty sure you can order them from different garden centers. Halifax Seed might even have them. You can definitely order them online. If you find somebody who's got a great big pile of horse poop and like say several years old, there's probably red wiggler worms in there breaking that down already, so you could just use those ones. So I'm just gonna tap this out. This is vermicomposting essentially, yeah. So what I'm gonna do is just spread this out over their new bedding. And then this is some of my compost from the freezer that I had sitting out overnight so it would thaw. And what you generally want to do is put it in one corner of the bed, so all the worms are going to go over to that corner and eat the food there, and that's a way that I could harvest their castings from the other side. So I'm just gonna, and that's all nice and broken down. This is like tea and peppers and some greens, coffee grinds as well. I'm just gonna bury that in the corner and the worms will find their way to that. And I'm also going to add some crushed up eggshells because they like those as well. This is another way to get some roughage in there, and the calcium is always good for the compost as well. And so you just want to break things up as much as you can, just so it's easier for the worms to eat. And so now that I've got them all in their new bed, I'm just going to put the lid on. And you want to keep the worms in a dark area and away from noise. They really don't do well with loud noises, and I like to pound my music and dance around my plants in here, so I'm going to move them into another room where they won't be disturbed.
One of the best uses of garlic scapes is to make pesto. Very easy to do. Wash the scapes. I like to cut off the flower tops and just use the stem.
Ooh, I can smell the garlic now.
Chop them up. Put them in the blender.
You getting this all right?
Yep.
Add some good olive oil because you're going to be making a paste. You need enough olive oil to get the consistency just right. Then add some good Parmesan cheese. I like to use almonds. You can also use walnuts or some other type of nut, maybe even pine nuts. Blend the whole thing up. Get it to just the right consistency. You can already start to smell it. After it's blended up, just adjust everything a little bit. You know how to do that. A little more oil maybe because it might be too thick. Maybe a little bit more cheese. And just keep adjusting until it tastes good. And you will not believe how good it tastes.
And I know you love me, and I know you care.